Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om. Allah.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today we're speaking with Father John Dupuche. He's one of the originators of the joint journey to Jerusalem, which is an issue we'll talk about later. But as is the custom, let's talk about how Father John has become Father John. Thanks for coming, Father.
Thank you very much. Well, can I go back to early days?
As early as you like.
I suppose the first major conscious experience that I had was at the age of 7, if I may say so, when I sort of, something profound happened in me around about the time of First Communion, and when I became aware, I'll put it in these words now, of the one who is. Now that sounds a bit sort of metaphysical, but that was sort of the experience that it has. There was a real, perhaps first conscious experience of any significance. And so then the wish came that I want to be with the one who is. And that was a great advantage because it gave me, you might say, great stability and a great sort of sense of security and peace, where there is one who is.
Absolutely.
And so that became very basic. And about the same time then I thought, well, now I should become a priest too. That sort of seemed to fit into the same context. So that sort of wish continued. My background, which is perhaps of some interest in here, is very, very French. So I was born both French and Australian, both at once. And my parents were French, and the family context was French. We spoke French. The whole culture of the home was French, and so on and so forth. So I sort of feel in a French way and think in a French way.
Okay.
I speak French with English words, that type of thing.
Yes.
And we often would travel to France every 2 or 3 years, and as a family, France, and so it had a big impact. The time passes, and I suppose the next major experience, if this is of interest to you,
absolutely,
is when around about the age of 15 there was a retreat at Xavier College. Went to Xavier College, and I thought to myself, well, now I will go to the ends of the earth. This the great adventure of life, and readiness to take whatever might happen. And so I entered the Jesuits then, as seemed to be the natural way to do it.
Okay.
To move on, and I was with the Jesuits for many years, and that was a valuable experience too, because I learnt lots of things. Attitude to study, also experiencing meditation, the whole practice of meditation. It was a very valuable time.
Yes.
But also it's a bit of confusing time too, because it's the start of Vatican II occurs at that time, and there's the whole shift going on in the church at the time. And while there were very happy years there, when I was with the Jesuits, I realized eventually that something was not right, that I should shift and change. And it was a big change for me to leave what I had spent many years with, and to move out into the unknown. This is part of the big great adventure, to go out into the unknown.
Yes.
And so I left the Jesuits, not knowing quite where things would go. And I think in the long run it proved to be the right thing, because I doubt I would have moved into this, or discovered and moved into this area of interfaith relations if I'd been in the Jesuits. I'd been taught to do something else.
Yes.
I would have had the opportunity to search and to discover. And so I moved out then, and of course a period of uncertainty, of change, and so on and so forth. I travelled a lot during this time. I taught in France, and I speak French fluently and all that sort of thing. So, but I did want to continue to be a priest. So I came back and then continued in the diocesan seminary. And I went to the Glen Waverley and Clayton and so on, and did my course in theology, double course in theology actually. And I thought for a time too, should I become a monk? So I went to Tarawara, the Cistercian Abbey, and I thought, it was a wonderful experience. I thought I should become a monk. But then at the same time, I thought, I don't want to be tucked away in a monastery. Nice that would have been.
That's right.
I wanted to speak the words of God to the people of God. So this whole idea of, being in public in some sense.
Yes.
And so I continued on with priestly activity. I was duly ordained, and then after my 3-year stint, as was the custom in those days, I then got appointed to Christ's College, which was one of the constituent colleges eventually of Australian Catholic University.
Yeah.
So I taught there. I was head of the RE department there and taught there theology for many years. And this was an advantage too, because it gave me a good knowledge of theology. The best way to know theology is to teach it. So you sort of picked up lots of things. So time passes, and then I begin to discover. So I'm searching all the time, and I begin to discover areas of thought that attracted to me. On my day off, I used to go to the library, a big library in the city, bookshop in the city, and I'd always end up in the Indian section. And so there was something attracting me there. So this is all part of an exploration, you might say. I was happy to be a priest, but I was also exploring for something else.
Yeah.
And the books was the way, because Australia is so far from anywhere that I felt I needed to, so time passes, and I discover fields of thought. I use the word Tantra because that's a significant word. I discovered a book on Tantra in one of the bookshops in Carlton, started to read around it.
Yes.
And I felt there was something very valuable here, but at the same time there's a lot of mixed stuff in that field.
Of course, yes.
And so you had to sort of use my, let us say, some interior light, if you like, to assess what was good, what was not good, and to avoid pitfalls. So there was a time of discernment. And my training in the Jesuit was very valuable in that, in the whole process of discernment. And so I sort of read around and all that type of thing. My father passed away. My mother was very sad as a consequence. I thought, it's important for her to go for a trip to France. So once again, I took her to France.
Before you go to France, we'll pick that up in a minute. We'll go to a break. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Father John Dupuche. And Father John, you were talking about the influence of Hinduism, the Eastern Indian religions. Kashmiri Shaivism is something which you've taken a bit of a look at. Can you explain that a bit?
Well, it was in the process. I'll just give a few preliminary sentences on this, because I discovered a field called Kashmiri Shaivism, and I wrote to B. Griffiths asking for advice. And he wrote back to me saying I should get in contact with someone called Thomas Mattis. So because of the work I'd done at Christ's College, the Archbishop gave me a year's sabbatical. So I went overseas, spent time with him, and in Paris, in a bookshop in Paris, I discovered this field of Kashmiri Shaivism. Very much under the impact and suggestion of Thomas Mattis. And the books then were available in French, but they were available, and which I had not had before. So I discovered this field, and I found it very, very exciting, because Kashmiri Shaivism begins about 1,000 years ago. In fact, the high point of it is 1,000 years ago exactly. Under the great writer Abhinavagupta. And who lives in Kashmir, so it's called Kashmiri Shaivism. It's called Shaivism because the principal deity in it is Shiva, therefore Shaivism. And but it's a non-dualist system. I'll explain that a little bit. We tend in our Western theology to divide things up. Dualist. Heaven, earth. God, man. Heaven, creation, sin, grace, all the way through,
Yes,
church,
yes.
state.
Yeah.
Whereas the non-dualist system sees all these things as one.
One. Yeah.
And so there's not this break. In fact, all things, if you like, are divine in a sense that has to be understood properly.
Yes.
All things are graced.
Yes.
Even what may appear to be bad
Yes.
is in fact, in some
Graced,
sense,
yes.
graced. The distinction between even good and evil. I mean, what is good, what is evil? You know, all these questions come up. And so it's a much more stimulating thing, because when you start to join opposites together,
Yes.
and to see that in some profound sense they cohere,
Yes.
then there's great excitement, or if you like, there's a great display of energy. And in fact, it fits in very well with Christianity, because Christianity is a profoundly, in fact, non-dualist system.
Yes, of course.
Because Jesus is both God and man.
Yes.
He knows heaven and hell. He knows good and evil. He knows sin and grace. All those things, he knows them. And he wants to know them. He wants to enter into the paradox of all these contrasting things. Because in the context of paradox, there is a deeper knowledge.
Yes.
So I found that all very
yes.
exciting. That's part of all of this, to put it very simply in a very few words.
Yes.
But that's sort of a fairly basic aspect of this. And I found it healed in a way the this division that we've created in our Western mindset, where we divide.
It's not hard to imagine why then you would be one of the originators of this joint journey to Jerusalem, because you've got the capacity to embrace a broader perspective from that interest.
Well, in fact, of course, that happened. So I found the great interest in myself in this field, which is so different from Christianity,
Yes.
that there was a dialogue going on inside me. How does Christianity fit in with Kashmir Shaivism? How does one light shed its light upon another?
Yes.
So the interplay of these things and the mutual illumination that goes on. So there was an interior dialogue going within me, and this sort of naturally led then to an exterior dialogue.
Yes.
So I then begin this process of being involved in the commission, the Ecumenical Interfaith Commission of the Archdiocese,
Yes.
and to get myself involved in interfaith relations on in a public sphere, you might
Yes.
say, in Melbourne. And so it leads on very naturally, of course, to
Yes, it does.
to what we'll talk about later, this joint journey to Jerusalem.
Yes.
But that, of course, comes at a later stage.
Yes.
So my real involvement with interfaith relations begins, let us say, 15 years ago, and there's all sorts of activities that occur, helped by the Commission, and I'm chair of the Catholic Interfaith Committee,
Yes.
and our role is to work with the Commission and to suggest things and to report to the Commission. So a whole range of activities with Hindus and Buddhists and Muslims and
Yes.
so on, so a whole range of things. And it does lead on to this this field.
Yeah, I was struck by the potential to go back even further as far as that non-dualism is concerned, into Taoism, and does it go? Do you see a connection between Taoism?
Well, of course, there are connections, and so to come back to this word tantra, which is so misunderstood, the Indians are very embarrassed about the use of the word in Western culture.
Yes.
They find it just
it has a
very very bad connotations.
That's right.
But in the Indian system, it is is perfectly acceptable, and sometimes they refer to tantra as the Chinese knowledge, or the Chinese
do
path.
they?
So there seems to be some connection between Taoism and the Indian form. But of course, that's a field that it was a big enough field to enter into, because I felt that reading these texts that I would read them a little bit, but not understand them adequately. But they produce excitement in me. A great resonance would occur. A humming would occur, like a primordial sound.
Yep.
And I felt I wanted to know. So B. Griffiths came to Melbourne, his last visit to Melbourne, and gave a talk. And his talk inspired me. I said, I got to stop beating around the bush and do something. Yes. So I went to see a lecturer at La Trobe, and he said, you must learn Sanskrit. And so I learned Sanskrit then, which is a difficult language, then did a doctoral work on it. And then translated a text and did a commentary. And I felt that I knew something about the field. So
Good
thanks to
heavens.
Big Griffiths, who was inspiring in that way.
Yes, and what a task to take on Sanskrit.
Yes, yes.
That's amazing.
But it is very valuable to know the
Yeah,
actual language,
absolutely.
the proper terminology.
And there is a language which is universal, and that's the language of time. And we'll go to a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Allah, Alleluia, Mani Allah.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Father John Dupuche, who's one of the originators of the joint journey to Jerusalem. Father, you were speaking before about someone who's quite notorious in relation to interreligious issues is Bede Griffiths. How was your association with him? Was it just by letter, or did you?
No, I went to Shantivanam and spent 2 months there.
Oh, did you?
And so I knew him to some extent, you know, and conversed with him and spoke with him. He's a significant figure, of course, because so many people were inspired around the world by his writings and his lectures and so on, and above all the example that he gave of an ashram. And I find the ashram sort of life rather fascinating and valuable. In fact, with my interest in interfaith relations, I decided to have a little ashram or community, interfaith community, in the presbytery or the parish house where I live in the parish.
Oh, right.
So there was myself, the Catholic priest, and there was a Buddhist monk, and then a Hindu Swami. And so we lived together for many years. Two have moved on to bigger and better things, you might say, but it was an important period for them to establish themselves, I suppose. And then I have now a house in Warburton, nice bit of land, and I want to set up a little interfaith ashram. In fact, a couple of Hindus are coming to live there in a couple of weeks' time.
Right.
And so to develop an interfaith ashram with all the stimulus that comes from mixing and meeting with people of different backgrounds and interests.
That's fascinating, and particularly in Australia and Melbourne.
Well, it's very unusual.
Yes,
There's probably nothing
yes.
much like it elsewhere.
No, there's a lot of different religions here.
Yes.
So what's the general interest in the ashram? Is there?
Well, people are fascinated by the idea. It's because in the process we have interfaith retreats as well, and in the process of conversing with people who have a different point of view, it's not a question of arriving at the same point of view, because that'll never happen, but in the very meeting of contrasts, one has to go in depth. And it's this process of depthing which really takes us to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
And so I find that particularly valuable. And there's sort of once again, this resonance happens, but not in the realm of ideas, but in the realm of relations with people.
Relationships.
And so you discover the heart of the matter as a result.
Can we go back to a very primary relationship? I was quite taken by the fact that you were 7 years old when you had this encounter. That must have been fairly deep in itself. What did that look like?
Well, it was sort of a profound experience which occurred with great simplicity. There was no disturbance around it. It was just an awareness of something that was so real, or someone, not something, but someone, and who is real, and with whom then I found myself, in a sense, one.
Yes.
To be with the one who is, and to be one with the one who is. So that's sort of, and this it's fairly straightforward in a way to me.
It's straightforward, but I suggest it's fairly unique. It's quite a deep experience for someone of that age.
Yes.
Now that sort of rolls over. So do you think you were? Well, it's the answer to the question is yes, but there seemed to be a destiny for you to move into that melding together of religious intensity, where people are coming.
Well, I think this whole idea of being with the one who is, this idea that one, of course, is a personal noun, if you like. this idea of oneness then is essential, because one can only be with the one who is if one is, united
Yes.
with others. And because division and opposition and conflict only prevent
Yes.
the process of becoming united.
Yes, it's the most often spoken of, the great unity, which
Yes,
is
yes,
and,
yes.
and B. Griffiths referred to that many times.
That's right, which is not on a level of rituals or level of ideas. It's on a much more transcendent, or if you like, much more depthed level.
And then around 15, you had another sort of experience.
Yes.
Yes. What did that look like?
Well, I can remember myself bending over a pew, in Xavier Cottage Chapel, with this profound experience happening of really being called or invited or drawn, if you like.
Yes.
This whole being drawn
Right.
into the unknown. And for me, the unknown, because I travelled lots of the world by this stage, we travelled lots as a child, was South Africa. I've never been to South America. I've been to South Africa, but not South America. And I thought, well, even if it's South America, I would go anywhere.
Yes.
And so to the unknown, and this creates this great sense of adventurousness. And for a boy of 15, the adventure, of course, of life. But this is a spiritual adventure, which I think is the most profound form of adventure, is the
Absolutely.
a spiritual one. So
And do you think you've been able to imbue other people with that capacity for insight?
I don't know. I really don't know. They'll tell me if I.
Yes, I guess they will.
But I think people are intrigued by this whole field of interfaith relations. People find it particularly valuable these days, and so the parishioners, they know all about this type of activity, and they think it's wonderful. They think it's just so right, and. The Catholic Church Life Survey, whatever it's called, there's a correct name to it.
Yes.
That says that most Catholics, it's only a Catholic survey, most Catholics consider interfaith relations as being very important.
Right.
So I think they, not that I caused that, but I like to think that my interests fit in with that perception.
Yes, it gives you confidence with the interfaith work that you're in.
It fits in with the church, and ultimately the church must judge. I think it's very important.
Absolutely.
One mustn't go one's own. One must also do with the wisdom of others too.
Exactly right. And as far as wisdom's concerned, we've basically run out of time. But I will invite you to the next program, if you would, to speak more deeply about the joint journey to Jerusalem. Would you be available to do that?
Absolutely, I'd be delighted to talk about that.
Thank you very much, Father. We'll be back next week, and we'll speak more with Father John Dupuche about the joint journey to Jerusalem. Thanks for watching.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.